And then, in 2005, you guys released your debut album, Bluestars. Debuts at number 16 on the Billboard charts. And then within a couple months, it goes gold.
Yeah, that shit went gold fast. Like we end up touring on the Scream tour with Bow and Omarion them. And we sold like 30,000 units every week on tour, all the way up until it went gold. Shit, it did numbers every week, man.
Right. You guys went on the Scream 4 tour.
We did Scream 4, Scream 5, some shit like that. We did a bunch of them.
Right. I mean, Scream 4 in 2005, when you dropped your first album, that was with Omarion, Bow Wow, Chris Brown, Bobby V, and a bunch of other acts as well.
Okay, yeah.
I mean, what was that like to go from, some local kids in Miami hustling, trying to get your music out there to platinum single, gold album, the biggest, kind of teen tour in the country, like, girls screaming in huge stadiums and everything?
Man, it was a lot of pussy. It was a lot. Hey, man, we were so young and dumb. We like, man, we trying to go platinum, man. We got a fucking million hoes, man. If we fuck a million bitches, we going platinum for sure, nigga. So I'm talking about we had a whole flow of bitches, dog. We were crazy jits, dog. We were young and dumb. We had fun, dog. We had fun, man. We used to be sending bitches to niggas' rooms and shit. I ain't sorry to call them bitches and shit. We sending girls and shit to niggas' rooms and shit. Like, we really did that, man. Like, we came in the era where they weren't even really making sex music like that no more. You know what I'm saying? It kind of like died out. And, we came with some real sensual, risque lyrics that opened the door for radio right now where, niggas could be saying a lot more explicit content on radio now. Cause they used to try to blackball us, dog. Like in like the Bible Belt, man, they'd be like, man, we ain't playing that. So we used to have to do 2-3 versions of a record. We got Grind With Me, Grind On Me, Ride With Me. You know what I'm saying? Ride On. We got so many versions. And then back then they used to have Walmart used to sell albums. I don't know if they still sell albums. I don't know the last time I went to Walmart, but they used to sell albums back then and they only sold clean versions. So we used to do the dirty version of the album and then have to do a clean one just for Walmart. We was Walmart #1 seller. You know what I'm saying? And I mean, it just was a lot, man. For some kids coming out of Miami, we ain't really had no influence or no cosign. You know what I'm saying? Ain't like, we had a feature from, Trick or Trina at the time. They was the biggest out of Miami at the time. It wasn't no Ross yet. You know what I'm saying? And T-Pain was from North Florida. There wasn't no Plies yet either. Pleasure did the record with Plies that ended up blowing up. Get You Wet, I think they called it. So yeah, shit, we had to pay the way, man. We did that,
Right. Off that same album, the second single was Your Body, which debuted at number 12, and it's still at 40 million streams on Spotify. That was a big song as well.
Yeah, that was top 10 pop. That was a big record for us too, Your Body.
Yep. Okay. So then the next year, you guys are kind of gearing up for your second album, and the first single is On the Hotline.
Yeah, On the Hotline.
That comes out, hits the Billboard 100 again, and it goes platinum. So here you are, because usually that sophomore album is that hard album, the sophomore jinx. Because usually that first album, a lot of artists, it represents like 5-6 years worth of work, and then after you have a hit first album, you got to turn around and make another album in a couple of months, and that's where a lot of artists stumble. But boom, you guys have another platinum single off your next album right off the bat.
Yeah, the thing about it, man, we was very influential in like writing our music and producing as well. So even with that second album, the label ain't even know we was working on the second album. You know what I'm saying? We went in the studio, started cutting the records. I think I called Static and had him fly down and help with the harmonies of the record. And we started working on the album, and I want to say Craig Cameron came down. I want to say we drove up and played Atlantic, the album. We went up in the tour bus, played them late night special, and Craig Cameron was like, "Oh shit, y'all got an album?" He was like, "Okay, let me get some other producers and songwriters on the album." So now when he came down to Miami, he tell us go to Circle House. We go to Circle House. He like, let me hear what y'all got. So we play on the new records and shit. And he like, all right, tell me what y'all think about this one. Man, that nigga cut that shit on. Nigga, it was an R. Kelly record. Now, back then, R. Kelly was the shit. This nigga was the biggest shit. Nigga said sliced bread. We like, nigga, this nigga just played as an R. Kelly record. That nigga like, he want $250,000 for that bitch. So we went and recorded the record. And, man, we did the record. The bitch was so raw. But we end up going back in the studio with Static one more time to do one more record. We like, let's do one more. And the last record that we did was On the Hotline. We left out that bitch 9 o'clock that morning, jamming that shit, went back to Atlantic, played all the songs for the label, and the whole label went crazy about On the Hotline, and that's how we knew that was the first single.
Right. And then that next year in 2007, you guys drop your second album, Late Night Special, and that goes #1 on the Billboard charts.
Yeah, #1 on Billboard, five consecutive weeks. You know, and that was my first time really getting my feet wet with the production. And I think Jimbo was mad at me about that. But Jimbo, I love you though. You know what I'm saying? But you know, I was like Jim protege, man. I was so young in the studio, learning from him, learning how to engineer, learning how to produce. I'm in the studio with Static, perfecting the writing. Static ain't even used to let niggas write with him in the studio. So I'm in the studio writing with him, you know, perfecting my craft. So that second album, I really felt like I wanted to give it a go. You know what I'm saying? So if you look at the credits, you know, I got an executive producer credit on that.
Well, I mean, it's one thing to have a platinum single. You know, a lot of artists are one-hit wonders and have a platinum single that just comes and goes. But to have the #1 album in the country, that's something a little bit different. That kind of puts you in a whole different conversation. So when that happened, what really changed in your life?
Shit, we were beefing, boy. When that #1 album came out, we were beefing so hard internally in the group. Cause we were having management issues and shit. And, you know, Pleasure walked away was the first one to walk away. Even though he sat down with me and we talked about it, and he was like, man, I'm finna go do a solo record, you know, to make more bread. You know what I'm saying? So we talked about it. He let me know. It ain't like he just abandoned the group, but management felt like he stepped away from the group and abandoned the group. You feel me? And it was a hard time because Atlantic Records, we like they #1 selling urban act. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, shit, it was conference calls, meetings after meetings. It was security on security. It was a lot of conflict at that time. We was their #1 selling urban R&B act. T.I. was the #1 urban act.
Well, right. I mean, you got this #1 album, and suddenly the lead singer decides to leave the group.
Right. So it was crazy. And he tried to leave before we did the album. We had to do the album through the beef. You know what I'm saying? We still end up recording through the beef, but at times we'll have every studio in Miami booked out. You know what I'm saying? Just producers in one studio, Pleasure in one studio, background singer in another studio, we rapping in another studio. You know what I'm saying? It was nuts.
I mean, from your point of view, what was the real reason why Pleasure P left the group at the height of your success?
It was money issues. It was the same shit that you see Meek Mill and them talking about right now. And you know, when you're a part of a label, and when you young, you don't really know this. So it's easy to make a mistake and could possibly lose everything, right? But to anybody out there that's, you know, watching this and could learn from this, man, them labels got to get their money back. Whether you sign to a production company, a record label, like I seen, you know, I don't even like speaking on other people's situations, but so I ain't gonna say no names, but any artist that get signed to a major, 9 times out of 10, they had an investor that owned the production company that put money up for them first. So that deal is finna go through that middleman first. And a lot of times the artists don't see no bread. You know what I'm saying? By the time the label get they cut, the middle label get they cut, the production company or the record company that you signed to as an independent, as a independent artist signed to an independent label, man, you ain't getting no cheese off that. You know what I'm saying? It's like now it's groundbreaking to see, you know, the new artists, independent, they got their own labels. They could distribute their own shit. You know what I'm saying? We blessed we can do that because we independent. Atlantic Records, they let us off. You know what I'm saying? Because we asked for that and they blessed us like that. So now we can distribute our own records and make that bread. But back then we couldn't. Back then that shit, you know, had to go through the pipeline. You feel me? So Pleasure, he, at the time back then, he just was aware of it a little earlier before we was, probably because he the singer in the group and he gonna be exposed to more people trying to pull him in different directions or give him game, in other words. You know what I'm saying?